ES Audio.
From the Evening Standard in London, I'm Rochelle Travers, and this is The Leader. Hotter than the Sahara. London is breaking records for its temperatures at the moment, and it's not over yet. The Met Office has given the UK's first red extreme heat warning, and the UK Health Security Agency has issued a level 4 heat health alert, both running from Monday to Wednesday. Transport for London and train companies are advising customers not to travel unless necessary. Some schools are closed, and there are experts predicting that Tuesday could even see the capital reach 41 degrees Celsius. I think it's safe to say it's officially too hot, and our city isn't exactly made for this type of weather, but it might be about time we have to start looking at changing that. Ross Lydall is the Evening Standard City Hall editor and health editor. Ross, what are some of the risks with this extreme weather?
Well, there are two main risks, and the groups that are most at risk are either sort of newborn babies and young children who are essentially unable to help themselves, and elderly people. The two risks are of heat stroke and of heat exhaustion. Now, heat stroke is the more serious of the two, and that's classed as a medical emergency. And if somebody is known to suffer from that, what you have to do is essentially dial 999 and request an ambulance, because they probably need to be taken to hospital for intensive cooling and rehydration. Basically, what happens there is that people become very hot, very dry, and they actually stop sweating, and their body temperature may rise above 40 degrees. Now, that's incredibly serious. Normally, body temperature would be around 37, 38 degrees, and to have your core temperature increase there is very dangerous. So be on the watch for that. Probably more likely, though, is heat exhaustion. And this is something that can be remedied essentially by going into a dark, cool room, lying down, drinking some water, and just sort of taking it easy. Basically, keep out of the sunshine, out of the direct heat, especially during the day. But the problem is that many people who will suffer here are people who have underlying illnesses, such as those who have been vulnerable to heart attack or had heart attack in the past, stroke, or various cardiovascular illnesses, which means that their heart and lungs aren't as powerful as others who are in good health.
Dominic Raab said that people should enjoy the sunshine. Is there an argument that we're being too cautious here?
I think government ministers are always concerned about essentially giving this idea of the nanny state, especially Tory ministers. They don't really want to teach sensible adults how to suck eggs and to be sort of seen as giving advice that sounds foolish. I think there is definitely an argument that as many people as possible need to be warned about the high temperatures. Hopefully everybody now realises, either from tuning into the news or simply from realising how hot it is outside, exactly how much risk there is. You know, the reality is, and this is what Kit Malthouse, another government minister, said this morning on the radio and on TV, is that this is not unlike many people would experience at this time of year if they're lucky enough to go on a foreign holiday. So take precautions and remain hydrated. But there is a sense, though, that some will be unaware exactly how hot it's going to be. And the other factor, of course, is the impact this could have on the infrastructure, and actually getting stuck in a car or getting stuck in a train or a tube. That's when the real danger arises to people. So that's probably part of the reason for the warning. But by and large, if most people are sensible, they can stay out of it. It might be an uncomfortable couple of days, but they shouldn't end up in hospital if they're behaving sensibly.
Can our infrastructure cope with these temperatures?
Not very well. According to TfL's updates this morning, pretty much all of the underground, which is overground. I know it sounds a bit daft, but there's actually more underground track actually overground and thus exposed to the extreme weather, such as the District line, the either end of the Central line, the top of the Bakerloo line. All of these lines were running with speed restrictions even from 9 o'clock this morning, and that then had a knock-on impact on the trains going through the tunnels in central London. Now, if anybody has had any experience whatsoever of the Central line, they will know even in the middle of winter it can be quite unpleasantly hot because it can be crammed and many people sort of sat there in close proximity to one another. I cannot even bear to think how horrible it's going to be on the Central line today. With lines such as the District line, the Circle line, those trains are air conditioned and are bigger. but it's not going to be pleasant. But basically, the tube infrastructure is really struggling today. TfL has closed the Hammersmith and City line already for the whole day. Even the Elizabeth line, the brand new line, is struggling at either end, where it pops out of the tunnel at Paddington and again at Liverpool Street on those overground sections as well. There are issues as the tracks get hotter. And basically, the danger is that the steel rails will actually warp in the heat. That means that the trains have got to go much more slowly to prevent the risk of actually falling off the rails. And by going more slowly, it means they can't stick to timetable, and everything else then just knocks back, and you end up with passenger journeys taking much longer than they would otherwise do.
Do we need to look at our infrastructure in light of the rising temperatures in general? It's no longer a rare occurrence for this to happen.
Well, I think there's probably two key lessons from this. One is about the wider climate emergency. Obviously, the UK can't do everything. Many emissions come from the US and from China and from developing nations such as India, but the UK can play its part. And perhaps this needs to essentially lead to the concern about climate change and extreme weather being taken more seriously. It's only a year ago we actually had extreme flooding in London, with both in sort of Kensington and Chelsea, and actually in Waltham Forest, where not far from where I am just now, quite a number of houses were flooded out, and the residents still are not back in their homes there. So extreme weather seems to be here to stay and also becoming more prevalent. The other issue, of course, apart from climate change, is actually in planning restrictions and in making sure that when we build new houses, that they are able to withstand the heat. The issue here is that houses have to be very well insulated, normally to save energy costs in the winter. But what this does, of course, is that once summertime heat gets in, it's very hard to get that heat back out of the building, particularly with so many new flats now having lots and lots of glass. You end up with this sort of greenhouse effect. So I think that has to be a consideration too. How well can houses be cooled in the summer, as well as how well can they retain heat in the winter?
What's some of the advice being given to people to stay safe and cool?
So probably some of the key advice today came from the London Ambulance Service, which said, please only call 999 in what it called a genuine emergency. Now, basically that means is don't waste our time unless you're seriously ill. Unless they say, if you dial 999 just now, you'll be asked two things. Are you breathing? Are you conscious? And it's almost the scale now that if you are both breathing and conscious, then try looking on the NHS 111 website instead for medical advice, or phone the 111 hotline. Don't try and call an ambulance. They're expecting 8,000 calls to the 999 number today. Even on a busy day, they would get 5,500 and be struggling to cope with that. So the last thing the ambulance service needs just now is any sort of calls that are really not life-threatening to help them cope with what's going to be an incredibly challenging couple of days. Because obviously, while many of us are at home staying in the shade, we've got paramedics out on the road trying to do their best to keep everybody healthy. In terms of general advice, it's like stay out of the sun, especially in the afternoon. Keep drinking, pull your curtains down, don't let the sun into your house. There was advice last night saying actually open your windows and doors early in the morning, let the cool air come in, then close all your doors and windows and try and keep the cool air in, and that can help to keep the house cooler for longer rather than opening all your windows. Essentially, it is stay safe without trying to sound like Dominic Raab here. It's like follow, good common sense advice. Do what you think. Don't go running around the park. Don't go for a tour bike ride. Don't go for a drive in the car. Don't get on the tube. Essentially, just chill out. I know it's like both the phrase, both in terms of your mental state and the reality. Chill out. Take it easy. It's only going to be 48 hours. By Wednesday, we have rain forecast, and the temperatures are due to drop by about 10 degrees to around sort of mid-high 20s. That'll be much more bearable. So essentially, chill out, take it easy, just let this pass. It's only 48 hours, and by Wednesday or Thursday, we'll be complaining about the rain.
Let's go to the ads. Stay there to hear more from Thames Water about the growing concerns over potential water shortages. Whilst you're here, why not give the leader a rate and follow? Welcome back. With the extreme heat comes more water consumption, and given the dry winter we had, could restrictions soon be on the horizon? Here to tell us more is Andrew Tucker, the Demand Reduction Strategy Manager at Thames Water.
at the moment, we're going through a fairly unprecedented heat wave that's impacting a lot of different parts of our daily routine and our lifestyles, whether it's train travel or just dealing with the higher temperatures at home and trying to sleep well. Of the last 11 months, 9 of them have been below average rainfall, which means that we didn't get the winter recharge into our rivers and our groundwater that we would really like to have. And at the moment, we've got highest, record levels of water demand from homes and businesses across our area. So roughly 10 million people or 4 million homes are using a lot more than they would normally use. And that's just because of the hot weather. We want to stay hydrated. We're drinking more. We're probably maybe showering a little bit more inside the house. But the big impact is actually the additional water demand that's happening in gardens, so basically outside the house. Things such as hoses, sprinklers, paddling pools, other sort of water using activities you might have. And that actually adds a significant additional chunk of water that the customer base out there is wanting. Now that our water is local, so it comes from our local rivers, it comes from streams and groundwater aquifers. So the more water that people demand right now all at the same time, it means that firstly, we're going through our finite reserves faster than we would like to. And secondly, it also means that when we're using the same time, sometimes the actual demand for water can outstrip our ability to abstract, treat, and pump that water. And that's an issue too, because you might have customers with experiencing lower pressure or no water at all, which we don't want to do.
The heat is obviously extreme at the moment, so people will inevitably be wanting to use more water in an attempt to keep cool. What's the advice you're giving to the public?
Yeah, there's lots of really simple advice that people can take on board. Quite simply, we want people to stay hydrated. You've got to stay hydrated in this weather and look after your health, and especially anyone with vulnerability to heat. So that comes as a priority. But it's all the non-essential water use, such as paddling pools, watering lawns, that it's not really needed at the moment. And we're just asking people to go easy on that non-essential water use. Let the grass go brown. It will bounce back. As soon as it rains, the grass will go green again and it'll be fine. But we are asking people to sort of pull back on the simple things that all make a massive difference when you multiply it across the entire southeast region. So shorter showers, turn taps off when you're not using it, fix your leaky loo if you have one of those, because each one of those can be more than doubling your total household's daily consumption. And when you're outside in the back garden or the front, just go easy on the water consumption there and don't water things you don't have to.
Should we be concerned about restrictions coming in?
We're hoping to get through the summer without sort of facing the need for restrictions. I know people are concerned around restrictions or hosepipe bans. We're monitoring this very closely every day, looking at how much water we've got available to us versus the volume of water that homes and businesses are demanding. So at the moment, we're okay, but we don't have any rainfall on the long-term weather forecast. So if the dry weather continues and the high rate of water consumption and demand from homes and businesses also continues, then we need to reassess things. But we're monitoring this daily, and if everyone can play their part, we do reduce the risk of having restrictions further into the summer.
And that's it from The Leader. This podcast is back tomorrow at 4 p.m.